Hey peeps. So, I was scrolling the Reddit, which is always a scary idea, and was scrolling the AITA. For those that don't know, that stands for Am I the Asshole? So I'm going to read this off first, and then I'm going to explain why this reverberated so heavily with me and explain some of the legal ramifications that could potentially occur here. Am I the asshole for reporting my son's therapist for sharing private information with his stepdad? Serious topic, right? My 36 male, son's 14, dog passed away recently. I signed him up with a therapist because his dog's death has literally left him unable to speak. He's been in therapy for 2 weeks now. And I'll touch on this, but for some kids, losing a pet is akin to losing a sibling, so that does need to be dealt with in therapy. Grief is grief. It doesn't matter what the grief is over, grief is grief. Back to this. 2 days ago, my son called crying, saying his stepdad punished him by taking his bicycle and selling it for no reason. I was livid. I went to have a word with his stepdad, and he told me that there was a reason, and that is the fact that my son badmouthed him to the therapist and claimed that he treated the dog poorly. I was floored at this. I had an argument with him and asked how the hell he knew all this and told him to prove that my son had said all that. He showed me texts between him and my son's therapist. So basically, the therapist had been giving out private information about a bunch of stuff my son talked about in therapy. I was even more floored. I went straight to the therapist, and we had a huge argument. I told him I was going to report him after he defended himself, saying the reason he gave my son's stepdad this info was because of concern as a parent. I said that I don't give a shit what the justification was and went on with my report. He, the therapist, tried to talk about how he felt for my son's stepdad and his concerns as a parent, so he didn't think he did anything wrong. My son's mom called after she found out about the report, and she blew up at me on the phone, calling me a controlling asshole for what I did. I ignored her calls after that, but my own wife thought I made a hasty decision and that the real problem was with my son's stepdad, not the therapist. Was I in the wrong for reporting him? The legal ramification is that the therapist revealed private information to a non-custodial parent. That is against the law, and the dad, the custodial parent, was absolutely within his rights for making a report. So for those that don't know, I am a therapist. That is my day job. That's what I do for a living. I counsel primarily youth. So that youth means under 18, and actually really I need to raise that age and say under 21 now because a lot of my clients are beginning to age. How dare they? How dare they grow up? There's a comment in here, someone asks that, was it a HIPAA violation? Like they're genuinely asking. It's not exactly a HIPAA violation, but it is a confidentiality violation, and there are legal ramifications. The therapist will probably have an investigation done against him if there are complaints from other clients along the same theme. This could go all the way to having his license revoked. He could be banned from conducting therapy sessions. It can be really, really harsh on the therapist. I still think the dad was in the right. I have worked with kids whose parents, custodial legal parents, have come to me and said, hey, so what did my kid talk about? And there are responses that you can give as a therapist that are vague, but that are still truthful. So one of the comments I tend to use a lot is, well, we made some progress today. Meaning that generally I'm gaining trust. We talked about a few things, like you never get to the meat of the problem in the very beginning. It always takes a few sessions, and I know parents don't always want to hear that, clients don't always want to hear that, but it is what it is. I get at, for some therapists, they charge $100, for a half-hour session. That is exorbitant, by the way. It can get expensive. I understand that. So parents signing their kids up for therapy have to keep that in mind. You're signing your kid up not for one session. You're not going to get to the root of the problem in one session. You're not even going to get to the root of the problem in 3 sessions. It takes on average 5 or more sessions to really start delving into the issues and really start gaining and earning that trust. So the fact that the therapist blabbed all of this information to the stepdad, if I were that kid, I would absolutely not speak to that therapist again. And if I were his dad, I wouldn't make him. The type of person I've had to talk to when dealing with clients is social workers and parole officers. Gives you an idea of some of the clients that I am working with. And it's limited in what I can even tell them. I have had 2 different parole officers so far that I've dealt with. One was very understanding. He just was like, I just want to know that there's progress being made. Just let me know that progress is being made. And I could give him the vague responses, and he was pretty happy with it. Whereas the other parole officer, he wanted nitty-gritty details, and I'm like, sir, I cannot give you those details. Well, I'm her parole officer. I have a right to that information. No, sir, you do not. And I truly felt like that was a parole officer. Or fortunately, I've heard horror stories from others so that I don't have to go through this and put clients through this, where if you give parole officers too much information, bad parole officers will use that against your clients, and they will absolutely use that as an excuse to keep them in the system. My goal is to help them get to the root of the problem so they can deal with it in a healthy manner that can allow them to thrive and survive within society. Unfortunately, not everyone who works in the system has that same goal. So even with parents, you have to be careful what you tell them. But there are always answers you can give, and so this therapist absolutely out of line. At a minimum, he should be under some serious investigation. I guarantee you this is not the only client that he has breached that confidentiality agreement with. And so yeah, that's all. I just wanted to talk about that, mention that, and maybe give you some, if you're looking into therapy, give you some ideas that it's okay to not trust your therapist at first. It's okay to take a few sessions and get to know them. And even with that said, there are going to be times when you're like, this therapist just isn't working out. I've actually referred clients to other therapists because I was like, I'm not getting anywhere with them. And I didn't know if it was me, I didn't know if it was the client. It didn't matter. We weren't gelling, and if we weren't gelling, we weren't getting anywhere. So it's better for me to refer them to someone else and know that there's a chance that that client is going to get the help that they need. And I do say client, I don't say patients. I am not a doctor. I am not their doctor. I am their therapist. It's a fine legal line. That's what I had wanted to talk about. It's kind of near and dear to my heart. Felt I should do a short little video on that. And thanks for hanging out, I guess. And if this is the kind of stuff you like, hit that subscribe button. It used to be a red subscribe button, but on my computer it's now a black subscribe button. Has it changed for anyone else? Just curious, genuinely curious. Comment down below if you have topics you're like, hey, you might know an answer to this. Give me suggestions for topics. I'm always open to them. And otherwise, my my content is kind of random right now. I'm just kind of throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks, seeing what's popular, and going from there. So, loves to you all. Have an awesome day, and we will meet again.